There's another quick line, probably the last one I'll bother doing. I've got so many highlighted here, but
oh, bless you.
Churchill, in his History of the English-Speaking Peoples, says this as they're approaching, sort of thing. Quote: "Each captain marked down his adversary, and within a few minutes, the two English columns thundered into action. The roar of broadsides, the crashing of masts, the rattle of musketry at point-blank range rent the air." End quote. So, I mean, that gives paints a picture.
Well, I was just looking earlier at Turner's depiction of the battle, and it's very I don't know whether moving is the right word, but you get a very visceral sense of how terrifying it was. I mean, and obviously, the French and Spanish. What would you say for their role? Did they put up a good fight, in your opinion?
They put up the best fight that they could. They were brave enough. They just didn't have the experience and training or leadership.
And yet they were vastly outnumbering us in ships. Is that right?
They had 33 ships to our 27. Many of their ships were bigger. The Spanish, for example, had the Santísima Trinidad, which was at that time the biggest warship in the world. She was a 4-decker with about 130 guns on.
Wow, flipping hell.
But as Victory passed through the Franco-Spanish line, she let go broadsides on both sides of her ship, and she basically destroyed. They didn't surrender straight away, but she more or less destroyed with those two broadsides 2 ships as she went through.
Right.
So the amount of ammunition they're throwing out, quite often they're measured in sort of how much weight of ammo they're throwing out, and the Victory, it's huge. A whole broadside from something like the Victory is quite a devastating thing. I can imagine. Obviously, I've not seen it, but
if you look on YouTube, you can there is a video on YouTube of HMS Victory firing a blank broadside that you can find.
Really, I've not seen that. Oh yeah, wow, I'm going to check that out for sure.
Yeah, I will.
Quite impressive. But you've also got to understand that in the age of sail, the ideal position for a warship to be in was to be firing into the stern of a ship, or less good, but better than firing broadside to broadside, the bow. But ideally the stern, because what happened if you did that was your shot went all the way along the length of the gun deck, because there was nothing to stop it. Like, you smash in the windows of the officers' cabins at the end, and then the round shot, and they were solid iron cannonballs. They weren't shells that we use today. The solid iron cannonballs would just run right along the deck, killing men, overturning cannon, and causing havoc. So that was, as Victory passed through the line, she was in absolutely the perfect position. And she got that because she'd put up with that 40 minutes of fire beforehand.
One of the things that sort of the reality of being in an early 19th century naval engagement would have been splinters. Wooden splinters. I remember hearing or reading something when I was a lot younger that loads of the casualties were caused by splinters. And I remember thinking, that's weird. That doesn't really make sense to me. But of course, we're not talking about a tiny slither of wood on your thumb. It's giant stakes of wood that are, chopping men in half or whatever.
If you watch Master and Commander, you will see there's some quite good scenes in that where you see the splinters flying from the cannonballs hitting the side of the ship. That's quite well done in that film, actually.
Right, yeah. And so when the Victory gets in amongst it, for some reason, well, we can speculate forever exactly why, but for some reason, Nelson himself, a rear admiral, well, they said to him before the action started, are you sure you want to be on the lead ship? You don't have to be. And he was like, no, of course I will be. And then when it all starts, he's just walking up and down the deck with Hardy, the captain. They're both just walking up and down. And apparently rounds are bouncing all around the place, and they're in the thick of it. As I say before, a lot of the French tactics were to have quite a lot of sharpshooters or snipers, and so they're all just shooting down at the Victory. And I think once or twice they very, very nearly hit sort of rounds strike the ground right in front of them, and Hardy or Nelson just says something that was close or something. but just
Oh,
this ultra.
they do see that in Master and Commander as well. That was claimed.
Yep.
But I mean, I feel a bit sorry for Hardy in a way, because he's kind of obliged to stay with Nelson, even though Nelson is doing this extremely dangerous thing. It's really quite needlessly dangerous to do that.
But on the other hand, the skipper of the ship would always be standing on the quarterdeck in action anyway. That was his post in an action, was standing on the quarterdeck. So Hardy would have been there even if Nelson hadn't been.
Okay, interesting. Right. And it's poor old Horatio that gets shot it's in the shoulder. It's obviously from above, because it goes through his golden epaulet on his shoulder. It sort of goes through one of his lungs and into his spine. And sort of, so that's what happened. A bit of gold, they think a bit of gold from the actual epaulet goes, sort of down into his body. And anyway, it's a mortal wound. But it takes him hours. There's hours of agony before he actually dies from it. So he's shot through. I think that's what he says. He says, "Hardy, my spine is shot through," or something.
Yeah.
And one of his lungs is filled with blood. So it's really quite nasty. They take him below decks
to the orlop. They take him down to the orlop. That was where the surgeon operated. It was below the waterline, so it was relatively safe from the enemy fire. So they took him down to the orlop, which is right down in the bottom of the ship. It's very dark, obviously. There are lanterns and stuff, and all around there would be guys having limbs lopped off without anesthetic and this kind of stuff. Wouldn't have been a pleasant place at all.
Yeah, he needs a bit more than matron in the infirmary. It's clear to everyone really that it's, as I say, it's a mortal wound. All
they could do for him was that he repeatedly, because he couldn't breathe very well because his lungs were filling up with blood, he kept asking people to fan him to give him a bit more air, and that was about all people could do for him, really.
Yeah, just try and make you comfortable in your last moments. But as I say, it takes a couple of hours before he finally succumbs or loses consciousness, and it's horrible because he's this great shining hero. He's not just an admiral.
Yeah, it's a good thing though that Nelson did actually, before he died, he knew that his fleet had won a great victory. Because
apparently just moments before he dies, the word comes that we've definitely won the day.
Well, so here's a question for you then, from Journeyman. Does anyone know if the quote "Kiss me, Hardy" is recorded history or a fabricated embellishment? That's a great question, actually. I don't know.
Yeah, it's both. There are people that say he said "Kismet."
Oh.
So William Beattie has the account of it, and
is a snog.
Oh, sorry, Andrew, I interrupted you.
No. As I say, there are people who say he said "Kismet," which is quite possible, but also the sort of late 18th, early 19th century was a more romantic period, if you like, and so it is possible that Nelson did say that, but it wasn't said in any sort of gay way.
Yeah, no, there's an account from William Beattie, and he's pretty clear that he said "kiss me," because Hardy did then, according to the account, lean down and kiss him on the forehead. But as we say, it's absolutely nothing gay about it. It's a man dying, It's
he was dying. He was losing his sight. He could barely hear. This is just a guy in the extremes. It certainly was in no sense anything homosexual or what have you.
And it's possible. I mean, Kismet is that Turkish or something? I mean, why would?
No. It means fate. It means fate.
In which language?
In English, it's Latin. I think it's fate.
Kismet. Yeah, I mean,
Daughter of Albion would probably be the expert on this stuff. I'm not.
It's out of place. I've heard it said that maybe it's from the Victorian times again. They were slightly. They didn't particularly like the idea maybe of the kiss me thing, so they tried to sort of spin it or change it. But the account by William Beattie is pretty clear. It's pretty clear.
Right. I've got a question. One thing I always find really peculiar is I don't know if this is a little off topic, but I've noticed that there's a death mask of him. Is there someone who just sort of hangs around in war type situations to to capture these.
I think that would have
plaster
been
monks?
done. That would have been done after his body was returned
I
to
presume
England.
so. Although I think
Yeah.
there was a few artists on board who seemed to capture his death.
It's really
In-
common to do death masks. I mean, Arthur Wellesley himself has got a death mask. It was quite common at that time. But they put his body in a barrel of
Rum.
brandy or something. Was it rum?
Rum
Nice.
or brandy. Yeah.
They put his body entirely in it. One of the
Oh,
last things he
nice.
said to Hardy was, "Don't throw me overboard. You're not going to throw my body overboard, are you?"
Oh.
And they were like, "Of course not."
And of course, if you want to, you can go and visit Nelson's grave alongside that of the Duke of Wellington in St Paul's Cathedral.